Hey folks, Elliot here, and today we're going to be taking a look at another mid-tier smartphone. By that I mean not a $1,000 smartphone like the iPhone or the Pixel 2. So today we're going to be taking a look at Xiaomi's Mi Note 3. So in the last year or so, they've released numerous cell phones. If you're not familiar with this particular company, that's because most of you are based in the US. With that said, they are still one of the largest producers of smartphones, and they produce maybe 5 to 10 per year as far as updates and iterations on their previous versions. This particular model has some of the bells and whistles that you would expect from current gen smartphones, and that it lacks in kind of random places. It also uses a version of Android which is, I would call it cutesy, but it is not particularly for me. As far as Xiaomi goes, this is a little bit of a mixed bag. So in the past, the Mi Note series has been their flagship or one of their flagship devices. However, if you look at the specs, and it is a bit of a mixed bag, it actually looks more like they're taking the Apple strategy. So that being said, it basically uses a reduced GPU and a lower processor. However, as you're going to be able to take a look in just a moment, you're actually not going to see much of a difference between like the Mi 6 and this particular device. So there are a few key areas that we typically look at when we're reviewing these devices. Design's one of those components. However, it's not just what it looks like, but also kind of the usability. As far as the Mi Note 3 goes, I want to say that it looks pretty much like every other Android device. However, there's a few deviations here. So it's sort of similar to the OnePlus 5 in that it has a pill-shaped home button, and it also has Touch ID built into it. And then on the right side, you have the power button and then volume control. However, unlike most Android devices, or many smartphones now, it does not have a dedicated switch to actually switch into like silent or do not disturb mode. However, of course, with Android, you can easily map the buttons to whatever you want it to be, so that is adjustable. It's just kind of interesting that they decided to opt out of that. That being said, it does not have a protruding camera on the back, which is fantastic, especially because now it has two dual cameras in there. As far as bezels go, it does have a little bit on the side, so it is not considered edge-to-edge bezel-less, and then on the top and bottom, it does have some bezels as well. Where it actually gets a little bit unique in the design component is that most of the body is now entirely glass. The only areas where it's not are on the sides or the rim of it. That being said, on the front, it uses Gorilla Glass 4.0, so it's a little bit more durable and scratch resistant. On the back, I'm not necessarily sure it's the same material, and if you touch it, you can actually tell that it's quite a bit different. It kind of almost feels plasticky, but it is glass. That being said, it is also super slippery. So if it's in your pocket, you get up and you go to check for where your phone is, there's a good chance it probably slipped into the seat cushions of your couch. It is probably a little bit clear that Xiaomi knew that this glass back body was going to be slippery, so they did include a soft sort of silicone cover that comes with it as well. When you put this on there, it removes all the slipperiness of it. I wouldn't say it does much to protect the device outside of basic scratches. That being said, it looks like they did some user testing, and at least they sort of had the foresight to include that in it. As far as ports go, it still uses the USB-C port. It does not have a headphone jack. Again, that's due to it being now sort of water resistant, or I would say more like splash proof. So as far as the camera and video components go, the Mi Note 3 has top tier specs. On the back, it has dual inset lenses, and they are both 12 megapixels apiece. On the front, and it gets a little weird here, it has 16 megapixel camera. So the reason for that is they just really love their selfies. Typically what we look for is both the hardware and the sensors. However, with Xiaomi, they just like to shake things up, so we're looking at the software. So one of their main features, and really, I guess one of the standout unique features in the Mi Note 3, is that it has an upgraded version of Beautify. So what that means is that if you're looking at someone through the camera or you're in selfie mode, basically its AI will detect how old it thinks you are and what gender you are. So typically it doesn't do anything with that unless you're in Beautify mode. So if you are in Beautify mode, basically what it'll do is sort of airbrush you, change the lighting, contrast, sort of give you those fun MySpace Photoshop skills that you had back in like 2000. That being said, the AI does work pretty well, so as I was looking at the selfie mode, it basically told me what my age was or what it thought my age was. So it would range from anywhere from like a 5 your wiggle room, but for the most part it kept landing on exactly what my age is. So as far as it works, it works. That being said, it is a little bit awkward and it might be a little bit damaging to your self-esteem if you have issues there. So, just keep that in mind. As far as video goes, it does have 4K and it shoots at 30 frames per second, but if you use 720, you're going to get 120 frames per second. It also has some of the other basic camera features that you'd expect, like panoramic, slow motion, time-lapse, that kind of fun stuff. So what you get under the hood is actually where you're basically going to be getting your cost savings. If we're going to make a comparison, I wouldn't actually look at the Mi Note 2. You want to look at the Mi 6. So that particular phone has a Snapdragon 860 or something like that, whereas this now just has a Snapdragon 660. So on paper, that sounds like a lot. In reality, it's only about a 10% difference in performance. However, subjectively, when I was just kind of playing with it outside of stress testing it, you really don't see a difference. And what I mean by that is if I'm playing racing games or some of the more high processing games, you really just don't see a lot of lag or concern that kind of pops up with it. However, when you're stress testing and it is designed to actually terrorize a phone, obviously you're going to see some of that in numbers. That being said, Snapdragon 660, you're probably not going to be able to max that out. It also has 6 gigabytes of RAM, so again, that's pretty much where you would expect for most smartphones. So when it comes down to performance, it uses the Snapdragon 660. For GPU, it's Adreno 512, and the CPU is an octa-core. As far as connectivity goes, it can connect to Wi-Fi 802.11, ABGN or AC, also dual band, and yes, it can serve as a hotspot. It features the latest Bluetooth, which is 5.0, and as far as sensors go, it has GPS, NFC, and an infrared port. It does not have a radio sensor in it. It also includes an accelerometer, gyro, proximity, compass, and barometer. As far as the battery goes, it uses a lithium-ion 350 MHz battery. So that is a little bit smaller than the Mi 6. With that being said, after using PCMark's battery test, it says it'll last about 11 hours of regular full use. So when you want to compare it to like a regular average real person, it should last about a day or a day and a half. With that being said, it does have Quick Charge 3.0, so in an hour and a half you get a full battery. Unfortunately, it does not have an external memory card slot, but the internal storage you get to pick between 64 and 120 gigabytes. So, would we recommend Xiaomi's Mi Note 3? Guess that kind of depends how much you love selfies. So, jokes aside, it really kind of depends on how familiar you are with their devices. If you've used Xiaomi devices and you're familiar with MIUI, then it probably won't be an issue. If you only speak English, this definitely won't be a device for you. And what I mean by that is not only is the user interface and their software kind of cutesy in nature, but there's going to be some language barriers because a lot of the built-in apps and browser especially is going to be based in China. So unless you know how to navigate through that, it will be an issue. That being said, you can still root it, so you'll be able to get the latest version Android, or at least Android 7 on here. So if you want a $400 smartphone, yeah, this is totally useful for you. If you're going to be doing some international travel, especially to China and India, yeah, totally. In fact, these are incredibly popular over there, so people use those all over the place. And it does feature dual nano SIM slots, so instead of having to switch services over, you can just go over to the airport, buy one of the SIMs over there, and kind of go from there. Really what it comes down to is if you're looking for the best price point, is MIUI really going to be a hassle for you? So if you don't know how to root your phone, you don't want to deal with sideloading things like Google Play, and unfortunately this does not natively support those, or any Google apps in particular, I would just spring the extra $100 and get the OnePlus 5. That being said, again, if you're used to Xiaomi and are super into selfies, yeah, this is totally worth it. It's only $400. Otherwise it's a pretty great device. Smartphone, and then it lacks in however, because it is Android, you can easily root. In fact, actually slightly slower in the processor and CPU component. GPU.